And welcome to Off the Couch, where psychology meets everyday life. This is Dr. Greg Cason. I'm here with Brian Gomez and Jamie on the board. And today, though, we have a very, very special guest. So I am thrilled to welcome multi-talented actor, producer, activist, two-time Emmy Award-winning Mike Manning. Known for his powerful performances, Mike has appeared in hit shows like Days of Our Lives, Teen Wolf, and This Is Us, as well as producing several thought-provoking documentaries. Beyond his success in Hollywood, Mike is deeply committed to social causes, including LGBTQ rights and youth empowerment, and we'll be diving into his journey as an actor, the psychological aspects of his work, and his passion for making a difference. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
It's really nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
So Mike, tell us about, you grew up in Thornton, Colorado, and you took the trail to acting, and you kind of took, I see, somewhat conventional but somewhat unconventional route.
Yeah, I didn't have any other professional actors in my life in Colorado, and so I didn't even realize, it never dawned on me that I could make a living as a professional actor. But it was always something that I was sort of drawn to, and I couldn't explain why. In middle school, in high school, I would always be looking for like theater opportunities or ways to perform in front of people. And but, by the time I got to college, I sort of gave that up because it didn't dawn on me that I could do that. So I was going to school for business, and my best friend at the time, John, his name's John. He came up to me. We're like in the library studying for a business finance test. And he goes, "Hey, Mike, you used to audition and stuff, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "There's an open casting call for a reality show next week in Boulder, Colorado. Will you come with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, just buy me lunch." And so I go with him. And it's the classic story where I tried to get him on the show, and then they picked me instead. Wow. And it was a rigorous process of like 8 rounds of these auditions and sending tapes to Los Angeles. And the closer I got, the more I allowed myself to think, what if this happens? And then my life changed overnight. I moved to Washington, D.C. I did the show. I moved back to Colorado. I was finishing my last semester of college while the show was airing, and I didn't realize, I think at the time, how impactful the show would be, and my life changed overnight. Like, I would be studying for a test, and I had friends in Colorado. I had a pretty good life, but overnight people are like, "Mike, come to this party. Mike, I want to be your partner in this test," or "I want to do this, I want to do this," and everybody knew me and my business and everything else, and it was a crazy time.
But on the show itself, I mean, the roots of your desire to work in human rights and to work for social causes really came out during that show.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what you believe, I think that if you are on the right path, the universe sometimes encourages you, or if you stray off a little bit, the universe kind of has a way of putting you back on the path as long as you keep your eyes open to those opportunities. And without getting too much into it, at the time, I was struggling with my own personal identity in certain areas, and I was struggling with my faith. And while I was in Washington, D.C., I was walking down the street, and I looked into a storefront window, and there was a blue T-shirt that said "Amen" on it. And for something in me was just drawn to this shirt. So I went into the store, and it was a store for the Human Rights Campaign. Oh. And they were doing this shirt was part of a promotion about showing how the LGBT community can be supported by the faith community. They don't have to be exclusive. And I went in there, and I ended up talking to the guy at the store for 30 minutes on camera because they were following me around for the show. And I was talking to him about how I was struggling with my faith and my own, sexual identity. And he gave me a business card and said, "Check us out." And I went home that night, and I stayed up till 3 a.m. on the house computer, and I researched the Human Rights Campaign, and I applied for an internship the next day, and I got it. And that changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And that really led you into working for social causes in general.
It did. I think that humans in general tend to want to do good. I am gonna, I'll take that to the grave. Like, I think people are inherently good, and I think that they don't get involved with helping others for whatever reason. One of those being that they don't feel like they can. And I think what being in DC and working with the Human Rights Campaign taught me is that, yes, I'm one person, but if one person does something good and another person does something good and another person does something good, I mean, there are 7 point whatever billion people on this planet. If every single person did something nice for somebody else in one day, that's 7 point whatever billion nice things being done. That could change the world overnight. And so I think it taught me that I have a voice, and my voice is powerful, and that if I worked at it, I could make a difference.
Wow, that's incredible. That exactly parallels my philosophy. In fact, I put in my dissertation, one person can make a difference. A bunch, or us all together, can change the world, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, what's that Maya Angelou quote? Or no, it's not Maya Angelou. It's oh no, what's that?
She probably
quote?
said all the good ones.
She said some amazing things. It's another quote. Now I'm ashamed I can't think of it, but it's like, don't doubt that a few determined people can't make a difference. Oftentimes that's that only that group can, or something like that. But it's exactly what you were talking about. If like a group of determined people can absolutely change the world.
It's amazing. And Human Rights Campaign's actually done a great deal of good. I actually was there at its inception. And in fact, I did the first National Coming Out Day, which is coming up October 11th. And the Human Rights Campaign took it on the second year. So I did it the first year with National Gay Rights Advocates, and then Human Rights Campaign took it over. Yeah,
I love that.
So yeah, I know the organization somewhat well from the past.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I think it's very, very valuable. But you grew up in Thornton, Colorado. So you grew up then in a family of faith? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
And you also were having sexual identity issues as you were growing up?
I mean, I was just getting to know myself. I just, I think there's a level of growing pains whenever you're trying something new. And, it just so happened that one of the most awkward times in my life was on TV. It's great.
Isn't that how it always is?
Yeah.
Very funny. Because you probably don't know, I was in a reality show myself.
I saw that on your Instagram.
Bravo.
Yeah.
So
how was that?
It was something.
It was something.
I enjoyed it, but it was intense, and it was a big pivot in my life in many ways. I think the biggest pivot was that it repaired some relationships in my family, and that was actually very important to do. So, did
they follow you around 24/7, or was it a show where you got some breaks?
No, it wasn't like Real World where they have cameras on you at all times, or whatever there are a few like that. No, they did give me breaks. I had because there were 3 of us that they were following, so they had to shoot. Sometimes they'd have separate crews, but they'd shoot us differently.
Okay.
I still had to work during that time. It was a rough time.
So it was. Oh, you were doing both.
Yeah.
At the same time. Yeah. Okay.
So, but I wasn't an actor, so it's a whole different It
is, but it's crazy how quickly you sort of forget that there's a camera there. I remember living in the house. I mean, it's, the 8 strangers picked to live in a house. And we were there, I think, for 3.5 months. And it took me maybe a week or a week and a half to sort of forget that a camera was there.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much brain power that you devoting that much brain power into being nervous about the camera being there, it just is exhausting. So, which is actually a great lesson now, where if I'm on set and there are cameras all around, I kind of don't even notice the cameras, and I'm able to just live in those imaginary circumstances with those other actors and really just sort of step into the role, which is nice.
That's perfect for acting.
It is, yeah. It's definitely helped me.
And, to really go to that then, I mean, how many people have won an Emmy? The Emmys were just last night. And you won an Emmy for supporting actor on The Bay in the 2021, right?
Yes.
And then also for producing in 2020.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah. It's one of those pinch me moments where I never really. Of course, I always wanted it to happen. You know, when I moved here, I'm sitting on the airplane, closing my eyes, thinking, oh man, one day if I'm on the stage accepting some type of award, that would be amazing. But you don't really know it's going to happen. You don't really let yourself believe. And I had, at that time in my life, when I first moved here, I had a certain level of imposter syndrome, I think.
I still got it.
Don't we all? But I think, in my mind, it's like, oh, I'm going to be auditioning against other actors that went to Juilliard or these film programs or these things. And of course, I had been doing it since I was younger, but on a much smaller scale. And so I felt like, do I deserve to be here in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, pursuing this? And I think that's something that winning an Emmy helped me with. I'm like, you know what? I do belong here. I am doing the right thing. So it was really nice. It was really nice. And it's also nice because the TV Academy votes for you as an actor, especially the supporting actor Emmy. The TV Academy members, many of whom are actors themselves, are voting for you. And so it's nice to be recognized for my work by people that I also respect. Yeah, so it was a nice day.
Well, I should say, I mean, and they're big, beautiful, heavy awards. So
I put it right by my front door. So if anybody tries to break in, because they have these 2 sharp angel wings, so I can just stab them with the wings.
Well, there's some.
Yeah, anybody thinking that you're gonna pull one over on me and break into my house, I'm gonna stab you with an Emmy. Why are we it's this early in the interview and I'm threatening your audience?
That sounds amazing. How many people, of course the stalker wants to end in a dramatic way. That would be perfect.
Yeah. What a Hollywood death.
That would be a Hollywood death.
Yeah.
A new script for you right there.
yeah, right.
But take me back to Thornton, Colorado, because you were a little kid. I think you had ADHD at the time.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
And tell me what that was like for you and how you coped with it.
I mean, I think I've always had a really active imagination. As early as I can remember, I'd be telling my grandparents or my parents or the neighborhood kids stories, or we'd be watching movies and I'd pause it so that I can act out the scene. And I think movies, maybe that's why I'm so drawn to movies, is because movies were really the only thing that I could focus on that would quiet the noise, and I could just watch a movie and get lost in that movie and lost in that world and just let my imagination play while I'm, going on this journey with whatever character it is. So I feel like maybe that's why I love movies, and they're so creative. In school, back then, especially, people didn't really recognize ADD and ADHD. I remember in 4th or 5th grade, I transferred schools, and my mom told my teacher, so by the way, he has, he's taking Ritalin. I was taking Ritalin at the time. It was before Adderall was really the thing. And I was taking Ritalin, and my mom was like, he has a lot of energy, so just let him play at recess, and make him sit in the front, make him take notes, give him something to do with his hands,
that's great advice,
and he'll be good. So that's what I do. And nowadays I'm a huge notes taker. I take notes on everything, and that's how I remember things, and that's how I have this old man planner that I write notes in, and then I write my schedule in, and it helps me to remember everything. And I've found ways nowadays where I stay organized, and I think I know how to live with it. I still think that I am, get distracted easily and whatever, but now I'm able to harness that energy and put it into things and be hyper-focused instead of distracted by everything. So anyway, long story short, my teacher didn't believe me, and so one day I got in trouble for talking, and she held me back from recess, and I went crazy after that. And it was that day that she believed that kids could have ADHD, and that holding them back from recess is not the way to handle it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, that was it.
But that was good. I mean, that's actually good advice. Your mom was onto something. I give that advice to parents, and I give it to people with adults who are dealing with it. Sit in the front and take notes. That is great advice, and to get out the energy. But people with ADHD are kind of interesting, and I think that you are a good example of that. They tend to be more creative, and they tend to be business owners. So this is just a commonality. So we see more of that in people with ADHD. Of course, they have regular jobs, but a lot of times.
And is it? I mean, you obviously know more about this than I do. Aren't they recognizing that the American education system is more geared towards how women learn and how auditory and visual learners learn, and not necessarily kinesthetic learners, which tend to be young men? Aren't they learning?
No, that is true. I mean, it's true that our educational system is quite limited in many ways, and we kind of stick to these very traditional models. And I think Montessori really tries to break that mold with more kinesthetic learning. And there are other places as well. But yes, our public system probably does need some sprucing up. I think good teachers, though, really, they engage in different ways to try to make things happen. So, like with kids who are in high school, you ask them lots of questions, you get them talking, you get them participating and dynamic. And with young kids, you do try to get them, like doing something crafty or something like that.
So. Yeah, I mean, I definitely had teachers that changed my life. And if Miss Copper, if you're watching, you're one of those people. I definitely had teachers that recognized that and took the time to teach me and change my life and encourage and showed me that I could be successful in academia. And I went from getting like barely wanting to show up to school to getting like straight A's. And it was a few of these teachers that sort of showed me that I could do that as long as I sat up front, took notes, and focused a little bit harder on paying attention.
It's also interesting that some kids who might appear to have ADHD might not, but they might have problems controlling emotional issues like at home, or they might have themselves be beyond the teaching level of the class. So if they're very, very smart, they kind of get disengaged. If they're not as smart, sometimes that also causes them to disengage. So because we teach class at just one level each time, it's, we have to adjust to the individuals in the
Interesting.
class.
So what you're telling me is I wasn't ADHD, I was just a genius.
No, I don't know about it. I
no,
believe
that's what I
that
heard.
you did.
That's selective hearing, too.
But the genius part, maybe so.
Okay,
maybe also right. So, yeah, well then, and you really navigated things rather well. I know you were on the wrestling team, right, in high school.
I was.
Then you were prom king?
I was prom prince, so it was my junior year. So I was prom prince.
Okay, yeah. Right on. I was senior class sweetheart. What about you, Brian?
I was prom king.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Are we royalty at this table right now?
No.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't know.
That's how it is. So that's just so funny. I mean, in high school, I always say that celebrities, like yourself, celebrities are society's popular people. Like, they're the popular people from our high school of the United States, because we basically operate like a big high school, don't we? I mean, we have the football team, everyone pays attention to them. We have the student council. They're, we think they're doing a lot of good, but really it's just kind of a show where they're getting drunk, or God only knows. And then you got the administrators doing all the hard work and all that.
Interesting. I've never thought of it that way.
I'm making a lot.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's if you look at like neuroscience and sociology and how humans interact. I mean, we're sort of taught how to interact. We're taught about social hierarchies at a young age. And I would imagine that doesn't really go away once we receive a diploma. So I feel like you're right for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Well, and look at me. I'm one of the, kids that took the academic class, what are now called, what are their advanced placement or AP classes? But we didn't call them that back then. They were just hard.
Just the hard classes.
Yes, we only had 2 AP classes in our school. I think now people have 52. Like, everything's AP.
Okay.
So I don't know how it works now in school. So I'm totally different. Let's talk about though, because your acting credits are really significant. We talked about The Bay, which I watched about your storyline, and I'm like, you know what I don't like about this? Can I complain about The Bay? I was like, the gay people here are too nice. I wanted some mean, and I wanted, but you got all huffy in that show. You were a very protective partner, because in that show you get married to your high school boyfriend,
Yeah, so the cool thing about the show is I joined in season 5, and I was a new character. I was I did I think a recurring role where I came in and I was the best friend of one of the series regulars, and the backstory is that they were friends in high school, but acted on nothing. Yeah, they were just friends. And then in season 5, you by the end of the season, you get the sense that there's something more there. And then season 6, they're dating. By the end of the season, they get married. Yep, like any good show, takes a season.
It was rapid.
Rapid. And actually, the cool thing about that is it was season 6 that I won the acting award for. And so I was able to go up on stage and accept this award for a storyline that I thought was very important.
Oh, it was.
And I think one of the main reasons I love about this, one of the main things I love about this industry is representation and the ability for film and television to change hearts and minds and to expose people to different ways of thinking and being. And so to be able to get up on that stage and accept an Emmy and talk about the fact that if one young person was watching that wedding scene between two guys and left that episode feeling like they were just as deserving as the same love as everybody else, then, regardless of the Emmy, regardless of any of the accolades that the show has given me, that makes it worth it.
It was tremendous because what your character did was really nice. It was during COVID, and your character was being very protective. I mean, he had this guy he was just starting to date. He became very protective. He wanted to protect his, and they all did become protective. And you were very thoughtful about things, and you organized and asked him to marry you, and it was interesting. The problems you had were fairly real, and then but you were such nice guys. And then of course that wedding scene, they could watch 3/4 of the wedding scene but not the whole thing, because
you need the drama.
You need the drama. It is a soap opera.
It's a soap opera and you need the drama. So
it's not that you guys did anything bad. I don't know if I should give it away, but
that was the end of season 6. We're in season 8 right now.
Oh, okay.
I feel like the
spoiler. Are you still doing the show?
I'm still doing the show. Okay. We just wrapped season 9.
Oh, wow.
And season 8, I believe, as of this week, is now on Amazon, Peacock, possibly Tubi.
Okay, great. Wow. Yeah, because of course there is they go in not guns a-blazing. I mean, but they go in and threaten you with guns, and because it's New Year's Eve, and of course everything happens. Their fireworks are going off, and it's a pretty dramatic ending for a soap opera. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of leads into the next one where you're really wonderfully protective of the boyfriend and really following to, I think, Puerto Rico.
Now he's the husband, so they got married.
Now the husband.
They gave him
right.
the vows.
You were the husband.
So I played Caleb McKinnon, and he marries Daniel Garrett. And the Garrett family is like, every good show needs the powerful family. So then he is kidnapped by an evil twin, because of course every show needs that. And then I do go to Puerto Rico to try to get him back.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and then you did This Is Us, of course. I mean, I don't know. These are not in order. You also did Days of Our Lives, another major soap opera. And you're working on a documentary about the crushing debts of the healthcare industry. And I want to get into your social activism work, but tell me about that. The crushing debts of the...
Yeah. So... this was a film that found me, again, the universe sort of knocking on my door. And a couple of years ago, I swore that I wasn't going to do another documentary for a while because I had just finished a documentary on homeless youth.
Yes.
And that was an amazing experience. I don't want it to sound like it wasn't for me. It was just a lot of work, and it took 5 years to make this film.
Wow.
And it was amazing. I got to work with Halle Berry, Rosario Dawson, Jewel, John Bon Jovi, and we released a film out into the world that I was very proud about and really raised awareness about youth homelessness, why it is such a problem in this country, how many youth are impacted, and what many different organizations across the country are doing about it. So anyway, we released it into the world. I was like, okay, great. I'm going to get back into scripted. And then recently, a friend of mine, his name's Seth Maxwell, he runs an organization called the Thirst Project, and they provide communities around the world with clean drinking water. Love the guy. He is from Indiana, and he came to me and said they're doing a documentary film called The Tenderness Tour, where it's following a man named Richard Propes. And Richard, he is a paraplegic. He's a cancer survivor. He is an author. He's a remarkable human being, and he does these little things called tenderness tours where he just wheelchairs around Indiana and meets people and helps them raise money or awareness for causes that are impacting them, a lot of it surrounding healthcare. So right now he's doing a tenderness tour, the biggest one yet. He's trying to raise $1 million. He's trying to raise $1 million to alleviate 10 times that for people suffering from medical debt. And being a part of this documentary, I have started researching medical debt. And it's insane to me that in this country, I think the stat is like 41% of working aged people in America are suffering from some form of medical debt. And just from a purely economic standpoint, it's bizarre to me that these are people that are working. They are working. They are part of the working population. The muscles of a healthy, productive country are its working people. And so you would think we would want them to be healthy, productive members of society, tax-paying members of society. We want them to be healthy and working. The fact that almost half of them have medical debt that they can't deal with is crazy to me. And you probably know this better than anybody. The price of medicine, the price of pharmaceuticals, the price of healthcare is insane. It is insane in this country.
Yeah, no.
And can I turn this on you? What are the main issues there? Why is that? Why is this an issue that we can't seem to solve with all of our resources and all of our experience?
One, and I don't mean to sound political, but I will, is that we don't have a public health care system. If we did have a public health care, we have little sprouts of a public health care system, like the counties and in California all have hospitals and they have things and public access available, but it's very hard to get into, and the services are limited. The money is definitely limited. I used to work in a county hospital, UCLA Harbor UCLA, and that one is one of the best in California, and we had some of the top researchers and people in the United States. So I'm not knocking it. I thought it was the people did not understand that they were getting some of the top doctors in the country. It was amazing. It's the same over at Harvard too, and we have some other schools, Stanford Medical Center and some others, that you can really access these top-notch people. So it's not like it isn't good. UC San Diego, I could go on and on, but but there is a problem, because what happens is, because of most people are insured through private insurance. Private insurance acts as a giant middleman, and most of them offer on a for-profit basis. That money then needs to go to the shareholders. So they make money not by doling out services, but by limiting services. I try to tell my patients this: the insurance company's job is to pay shareholders, not to give you access to care, because they get very frustrated about this. I said they're selling a product where they have to do that, so they will give you care. They just put up some barriers, and either you have to work around the barriers and try to get through them, or you have to, figure out something else. But the insurance companies are not our friends. They're really working on paying themselves. And now that they're all, coming together closer and closer, that's why I actually belong to, here in California, to a nonprofit HMO, just because I want to be a part of at least not a profit-driven healthcare system. So that's where I go. Well, it's Kaiser here, but a lot of people will put that down. Even though I've worked in UCLA health system,
they'll put it down because of the access to care, or why would they put that down? Because
it had a very bad reputation, and maybe well-deserved in the past. They've certainly turned things around, and they really they stay on the edge of helping people, and they use model of medicine that I really like. It's actually what they try to do is operate more on the prevention side to prevent people from getting sick. So they try to give vaccines and they follow you and they watch, if you have weight issues, they try to help you there. They try to do everything. They give mental health access. They've actually were sued for not giving enough mental health access. So I take it back. Their mental health has struggled. So they're not a perfect organization by any means, but I think they operate more like a public health care system than other places. But as a result, a lot of people don't like it because when you go, you're not in a fancy waiting room, you're not in a fancy this or that. But again, I access great care there. I mean, the doctors I'm very pleased with. So I like that model, but that model isn't popular and people are always wanting private health care insurance. And when we had the Affordable Care Act, which is known as Obamacare, pass, it was life-changing. And the fact that people keep trying to, one side of the aisle keeps trying to vote it out, it's really concerning because that gave access to millions more people, including me, because I had to go through the private healthcare system, which is really, really tough because you have to go through medical underwriting. I'm sorry, I'm going way too much into this. But the bottom line is the insurance companies are trying to make money. Pharmaceutical companies are all about making money. So they charge us more. The medical, it's not just those companies, though. It's also medical equipment, durable medical equipment, all those things charge more here. So people really are stuck paying more money. And the insurance company, everyone has to pay more money to get the same services you might get in France or Germany or in England for less. And the BS that I hear from people about, I heard someone had to wait 6 months for a surgery in Canada. I'm like, well, then it was probably not an emergency surgery because they will take you in if it's an emergency. Okay. But if it's, one of those things you can wait. Okay. So
yeah, and I don't have all the answers. I am just curious as to how
very complicated.
It's become this because it wasn't always that way, and it seems to be getting worse. I am happy that painkillers and a bunch of these either scripted or unscripted films and TV shows have come out recently and have sort of shined a light on the abuse of the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry. So I think things are changing, hopefully. But I was just curious because it seems like.
And is it just because there's no regulations to govern
those?
No,
there are tons of regulations. And thank God for the regulations. They really protect us, I have to say.
Oh,
that if we didn't have regulations, all bets would be off. So thank God that there are industries, watchdogs over these companies, because this is just a huge cash cow. Healthcare, if you invest in healthcare stocks, you're sitting pretty because it does very well. So the for-profit healthcare side, and now it's all gone, it's all turning, and I don't know if this is really talked about in your movie, but a lot of it is turning into these private investment groups are now running these, they're buying up all the practices. A lot of doctors are selling their practices and then becoming an employee of the practice, but they make money from selling it, and then they basically have to run under the auspices of the investors. So it's kind of scary.
So that's even worse. So that's essentially making it worse.
In my book, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of any of that. Like I said. So I wish we just had healthcare available for all people. I like systems where if we all got access to the same care, and if people wanted to pay on top of it for other care or additional care like we do with plastic surgery or other things, then great. If they can afford that, and that's within their budget, but it's not necessary. But I do think health care for the necessary amount should be there for all people.
Agreed.
So, yeah. Off my soapbox. This is your interview. You should never ask me a question.
It's fine.
But that sounds like an extremely important.
Yeah, I was genuinely curious as a doctor from your point of view, and it's sad. I think that. I'm trying to remember the statistic, but it was an alarming statistics of people that I think either the most or the second most leading cause of bankruptcy in this country is medical debt,
Oh.
unexpected medical debt.
I believe it. I was in a car crash when I was a grad student in Arizona. I was a grad student in Texas, but I went to a conference, like a workshop in Arizona and in Phoenix, and I was just sitting there at lunch in my little car, my little rent-a-car, and all of a sudden a huge truck hit
could
me
you
from
imagine?
behind.
Could you imagine either living paycheck to paycheck and barely getting by, and having a car accident throw your life off course, or doing well and then having something like cancer or having something that you need continuous care for, and it changes the trajectory of your entire life. And we think that we pay into healthcare, we pay to the insurance company, we pay this to prevent things like that when the time comes. Hopefully not, but maybe from ruining your life. And it is not, that is not the way things work, and I'm learning more and more about that, getting more and more enraged about the way things are and the amount of people that are, losing their lives, losing their homes, losing their cars, their everything that they've worked their entire lives to build. These lives, they are losing it because of one accident or one medical diagnosis or something, and it's not fair. So that's why we are making a movie about it, because that is the only way I know how to create change.
Well, it's going to reach more people than I personally can. I mean, this is why I think movies are so valuable. What is that movie called again?
It will be. The working title is The Tenderness Tour. I'm not sure what the
but
final
it may
title will be.
be different.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the one you did talk about, though, Lost in America, which is on youth homelessness. I was brought to tears at several points while watching that film. It was an incredible film. And I was telling the guys before you came, like, stories of some of the kids in the film, because it was just so touching. Can we talk about that film just a little bit? I think the thing that shocked me, there were some stats in the film that kind of shocked me. Like, there are 5,000 shelters for animals. There are 5,000 shelters for animals in the United States, but only 400 shelters for kids. That 4 million young people ages 13 to 25 are homeless, according to University of Chicago Chapin Hill, and an average of 13 homeless youths die on the street every day, which is the same as the number that died in the Columbine shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stunning statistical look. And I think one of the things that was so interesting about that film is it struggled with the statistics as the movie was being filmed. And they didn't get a final number until that one study.
Exactly. Yeah. So throughout the course of filming, when we first started to answer the question, I mean, when you solve an issue, you have to first identify the issue in order to solve it. So we were like, okay, we're going to do some research and figure out how many youth are living on the streets. How many youth do we need to help with this movie and with this message? And we couldn't get a straight answer. We would meet with members of Congress. We would meet with senators. We would meet with, at the time it was a representative for Obama, about how many youth were on the streets. And we would meet with one person, they'd say, oh yeah, 1.7 million youth. And one person would say, oh yeah, only 100,000 youth. One lady said only 70,000 youth in the whole country. And so in the beginning half of the movie, like every documentary, I think if it's a scripted film, all of your prep is like, okay, we're going to make the script, we're going to cast our actors, there's all this prep in the beginning of the movie, and then you shoot your movie, you edit your movie, that's the movie. With a documentary, you have a rough idea of the story you want to tell, but then, and you gather as much footage as possible, and then in the edit, you kind of figure out what journey you're taking your characters on, and you sort of discover the film in the edit. So the reason that the film took 5, almost 6 years for us to make is because these statistics kept changing, and we kept meeting more and more youth and more organizations around the country. We went to 13 different cities. The director, Rotimi Rainwater, was himself homeless. So he had a way of meeting these youth, and a long time ago, not currently homeless.
No, but spoke their language.
I mean, so he when he was 19, he was homeless, and then now he's, a father of 2. He has a house. He's a successful filmmaker. But exactly, he had a way of meeting these youth where they were and talking to them and looking them in the eyes and saying, look, I know what you're going through. Help me tell your story. Yeah. Because a lot of these youth don't trust anyone of authority because they've been hurt so many times. And so the reason it took so long is because, our stats kept changing. But one thing that didn't change was the reasons that these youth were on the streets. And the overwhelming, I think half of we'll say 4 million youth, right? During any given year, there are 4 million youth that do not have a sustainable home to sleep in. And the main reason is they're either running from something, home isn't safe. They don't have a home to go to, so that's economic, or they are being abused at home. There is a small fraction, yes, that are dealing with drugs or alcohol abuse, but that is a small fraction. And when people think, that person must have chosen to live on the streets, and nobody chooses that lifestyle. And so also the effects of being homeless on a youth are detrimental. And you probably know this, but within the first 2 weeks of living on the streets, a youth will be robbed and beaten, robbed of all their possessions, beaten. They will take drugs for the first time, even if they've never taken drugs in their entire lives. And it's mainly to stay awake at night, to prevent themselves from being robbed and beaten, or to fit in with whatever group they meet. And they will, unfortunately, within the first month on the streets, perform their first act of survival sex. And once that happens, especially to a young person, the psychological damage that takes place it takes a lot of effort and work to get back to normal.
Yeah.
And in my mind, just from a purely, regardless of what side of the aisle politically you sit on, it makes sense to provide a safety net for young people. If we want young people to grow up being healthy, productive, tax-paying members of society, no questions asked. If you are, 15 to 24, if you do not have a safe place to go to sleep and to get food and shelter, there should be one, no questions asked, provided. And in many states, we treat pets and animals better than we treat young people.
Oh, absolutely.
So that is what the message that we tried to get across with the film, and I'm very proud of it. It was a lot of work, but if anybody's interested, it's called Lost in America, and it's currently streaming everywhere.
No, I thought it was a stunning documentary, and it was very well made, but it takes you into these stories that are so compelling. And different, they're all people you feel for because you understand the world they came from. And maybe you wouldn't. I mean, there were one tragic after another. We can't go into them. But what was fascinating to me is all of them were touched by severe trauma in some way. I mean, it depended on what it was. And they were all pushed out in different ways. But there were some pretty horrific stories, and it's exactly what you said in the sexual assault, which was horrible, and the survival sex and getting trafficked or getting forced to have sex or being pushed to have sex by somebody else was really astounding as well.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was an important film. You did another film though that I thought was amazing too, Kidnapped for Christ.
Yeah, that was the first documentary I had produced. I had moved to Los Angeles from Colorado. I did a guest star role on a Disney XD show called Crash and Bernstein. I think I'd just done a guest star role on like Hawaii Five-0 and Major Crimes, and then I had booked this Disney movie called Cloud 9. It was a snowboarding movie, and at the time it was definitely the biggest project I'd ever done. So I was finally working as an actor. I had my own apartment. I could finally, some of that imposter syndrome was going away a little bit, and I was finally like, okay, cool, I'm making it. I'm working as an actor. So I got comfortable. So as the universe does, it
made you uncomfortable.
Made me uncomfortable in the best way possible. So a friend of mine who I went to college with, his name's David, when I met him, he was 19 and he was pre-med and, very smart, very sweet individual. Apparently, when he was 17, he came out to his parents and they sent him to a reform camp in the Dominican Republic. And I never knew this. I met him afterwards. I'm living in Los Angeles. I'm maybe 22, 23, so is he. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, Mike, there's a documentary being made about the camp that I went to. I'm doing a follow-up interview with this filmmaker about it. Can I come stay with you while I'm in Los Angeles? I didn't really think anything of it. I said, sure, why not? So he comes over to Los Angeles, and we have a couple shots of tequila, and he opens up and he tells me this entire story about when he was 17 being sent to this camp and the physical and mental things that happened to him there. And by the end of it, I have tears in my eyes, and my heart is breaking for my friend. And I said, well, I want to help. I don't know how. I don't know. I've never produced anything, but I want to help. And I grabbed coffee with the filmmaker, the director, Kate Logan, the next week. And I went to that coffee thinking like, okay, well, I'm just going to meet a director and maybe I'll tweet about it or something, at the time. And by the end of the meeting, she says, I have all this footage, but I really don't know what to do with it. And I said, well, I don't know how to produce, but let's figure it out. And it was very much trial by fire for the next year. I would call somebody. I brought a friend in to help produce. His name's Tom DeSanto, and he's produced X-Men, Transformers. He's a huge, huge producer in the industry. He knew somebody that was affected by these reform camps. Mm-hmm. And so I call him and I say, hey, Tom, can I send you some footage of this film that I just got involved with? And he said, sure, why not? And I sent it to him, and I didn't hear back. And a couple days later, he calls me, and I say, hey, did you watch the footage? He goes, yeah, I did. I said, what do you think? He goes, I'm going to produce this with you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, what? Because I just wanted him to point me in the right direction. And he goes, I'm like, excuse me? He goes, I will produce this movie with you. And apparently one of his friends was sent to one of these reform camps and came back and couldn't cope and committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And he never forgave himself. And so he said, look, this is a story that I need to tell. And so the next year was like, Tom would call me, hey, you guys have your release forms, right? You have all this together and organized for delivery, right? And I said, yeah, of course. And I would go on Google, like, how to get release forms. And he's like, all right, you guys have E&O insurance, and you have this, and you have this. And I was like, yeah, of course, Tom. And I would be like, what is E&O insurance? And I taught myself how to produce.
It's errors and omissions for the people.
Yeah. Well, and that's just, I mean, for anybody listening.
How would you know?
I had no idea. And for anybody listening, it's another example of like, it would have been easier if I had said, look, I don't know how to produce. I'm not going to do this. I am overwhelmed, and who am I? But I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to be honest about it, but I'm going to figure it out because I care. And I did that, and it was my first film, and that came out. We sold to Showtime. Some press came out, and it said, Disney actor produces social cause documentary, and people started calling me to help them with their social cause films, and now it's become a big part of my life.
Wow. I mean, it's an important film. These are these behavior modification camps. This one just happened to use the Bible and the Christian faith to try to modify people's behavior, but almost uniformly these camps have a great deal of abuse, and it's almost, there's a whole thing if you've ever seen the movie perhaps or in a Psych 101 class heard about the Stanford Prison Project, it talks about when you get people into these situations where they're forced to be captive, and then you have these people who are basically the prison guards, or they're the teachers and the dorm fathers, whatever they call them, that they can start leaning into the abuse. Mm-hmm. And it was really quite striking, and I thought that was an important film, and I especially loved that the narrator herself went in wanting to do basically a fluff piece about the school.
The most bizarre thing, and it's been so long, I actually forgot about that aspect of the film. So the most bizarre thing about this film is that the filmmaker, Kate, at the time was a Christian film student
at Biola Christian School.
At a Christian film school, wanting to go to this camp. And this camp, it wasn't just a gay thing. This camp was basically a dumping ground for wealthy evangelicals that would send their kids there thinking that they were doing the right thing. The camp cost more than Harvard.
Than Harvard, yes.
They
$72,000 at the time.
A lot of money to send their kids there thinking they were helping their kids.
Yeah.
And what would happen while they were there, their phones were cut off, and these kids were physically and mentally abused. Kate, going into it, thought that she was going to do a fluff piece, a promo piece for this camp and about all the good that this camp was doing. And she kept a video journal as she was there at this camp. So the first week, you see her in camera. She goes, "Look, I'm excited to be here. This is my first film. This is going to be great." The second week, it's not what I expected, but I'm going to make the most of it. The third week, wow, this is not what I expected at all, and I think these kids are being hurt. And by the fourth week, she was like, these kids are being abused, and I need to make it my mission to expose this camp for what it's doing. And then it made her question, that was her new mission, it made her question her faith. Like, it was a really powerful experience on her as well.
Yes.
And I think that's why audiences, it wasn't a huge budget film. The footage wasn't fantastic. Sometimes it'd be out of focus, but the heart of the movie was there, and it was so authentic and raw, almost hidden camera footage sometimes.
Yeah.
Because actually, not almost, it was hidden camera footage sometimes, and Kate's journey was so authentic. That is why I think Showtime bought it, and that's why I think audiences connected with the film.
Yeah, I certainly did. I mean, there's definitely a problem in this country. Of course, Paris Hilton just spearheaded some legislation that is near to being signed. I mean, or it did get signed. I can't remember at what point. I think but it certainly passed, several levels. But you're the other things, like in the homeless documentary and in this documentary, they talk about legislation and about how most stuff just dies in committee. The Lost in America one, if I can go back to that, the legislation, Heidi Heitkamp, actually, who was a senator at the time, I think from North Dakota, she said there were 4 words that killed the bill by the Republicans. They killed the bill for 4 words: sexual identity and sexual orientation. I mean, just shocking that made them kill money for homeless youth.
Yeah. If you say that you truly care about homeless youth, you have to care about all homeless youth.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Unbelievable. But your work has been very important. I think that's it's something that really excited me about talking to you, because acting, I can talk about, and it's interesting, but this kind of work is mission driven, and I think when you have a mission, it makes meaning in life, gives us purpose. And I think that's one of the most important things we can be, is to be purpose-driven. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, for me, I think that is a point of view that's evolved, if I'm being honest. I mean, of course, when you're in your early 20s, you think that you're untouchable and invincible, and I think you tend to live in the here and now a bit more, right? There are people in their 20s that are doing amazing things. And I think when I first moved to LA, it was about the career. And I was like, okay, how can I, make movies and make a name for myself and everything else? And I think as I get older, I'm in my 30s now, and I think as I get older, you just kind of, it puts things into perspective, and you think, okay, at the end of my life, and listen, I hope it's a long way away. Like, listen, I'm not saying I'm thinking about, what's going to be on my tombstone, but I think as I meet more people and I sort of hear more stories, it's like, and the fact that I've been involved now with projects that have made an impact, and I've seen them, they're like my little babies. I put them out in the world, and I see the good that they're doing. That is now my motivation. At the end of my life, I want to look back and say, I was a part of these films and these stories that will live well beyond me, and hopefully continue to make the world a better place.
Well, I think you have. I mean, so many of your films did that, and we didn't have time to go into everything. Unfortunately, we need to end. But I think there are so many, like Son of the South. We could go through all these different things. You've done some incredible movies. I mean, it's incredible work. And the documentaries, I think, really excited me the very most in your work with advocacy and social injustice. It's just really impressive, and I thank you for doing that work, using your platform that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end. that wraps up the show. Remember to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. The links to my studies go to YouTube page at youtube.com. I won't be / Dr. Greg, sorry. But we won't do links to studies today. I'm sorry. So today it'll be links to your website. That's mikemanning.info.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
Right on. And then, but also I have links to the movies on there, as well as some other things. I put links to legislation and stuff, just so people can check it out if they want. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and of course the incredible Mike Manning, bidding you all farewell. Be present, be flexible, and be kind.